and welcome to the latest episode of the Give My Head podcast with me, Tim McGarry, and my comedy colleagues,
Michael McDowell
and Damon Quinn.
As you know, we cover comedy, arts, culture, and politics in this exciting podcast. We're in episode 19. Before we start, we have a couple of plugs to give, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we have some excellent sponsors: Phoenix Energy, Hollywood Home Care, and I'd like to give a special plug to a man who fixed my phone, fixed my computer, the Pocket Geek guys, Pocket Geek computer guys on the Lisburn Road, top of Tate's Avenue. Very, very good guys, really, really helpful. Give them a shout if you have any problems with your phone or your computer or your laptop or anything. They're very, very, very good, and they're very, very friendly. Ask for Kevin in there. Tell him I sent you. He might even give you a discount. He probably won't, but I Pocket Geek guys on top of the Lisburn Road there, at the top of Tate's Avenue there. Two other plugs. First of all, I am still on tour with my wonderful solo show, Height of Nonsense, back in the Lyric Theatre on the 29th of March. I'm in Bangor on the 8th and 9th, or 29th of March. What are you, super up, Tim? 29th of August, and I'm in Bangor on the 8th and 9th of August as well. I'm in Strabane on the 7th of October as well with Height of Nonsense. 30 recommended. Sold out the Lyric last week. Had a lovely, lovely time. Beautiful Lyric Theatre. And finally, last plug before we speak to our wonderful guest, Give Me Headpiece is on tour next year. Tickets are already on sale at the Grand Opera House. We're in the Grand Opera House last week in March. Go to goh.co.uk. Where are we going down south? We're going to the Vicar Street.
Yep.
Vicar Street in Dublin, ladies and gentlemen. Tickets again on tour to go and see us in Vicar Street, or go to goh.co.uk for the tickets.
We're doing our bit for United Ireland.
We're doing our bit for United Ireland. We're a cross-border body.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we are delighted to welcome Sorcha Eastwood, MP. Thank you very much for joining the Give My Head podcast. You're not the first politician we have had in this podcast. We're not the first alliance politician we have had. We've had the boss, Naomi, and we've had the boss. But thank you very much for joining us. How the heck are you, Sorcha?
I'm very good. Do you normally just let him run on at the start like that? All this other stuff? That's ridiculous.
Well, the Give My Head pieces are with joint enterprise. See my joint and my solo stuff. They didn't even bother coming to see me. They couldn't
good
even
for you.
bother the arms.
Just right.
I've seen it already. I've seen it already.
I would offer you a couple of free tickets, but you're
Single
an MP,
transferable show.
No, you're. Whoa! Whoa!
I'm
Sorry,
giving you run for your money.
Don't fall out around 2 minutes into the show. I would offer you a couple of free tickets, but obviously you wouldn't be able to accept them because you're an MP and you have to declare it as an interest.
Only if it's over a certain threshold.
All right. So if somebody was to give you £5 million and say,
now see
that's
exactly
for your new house in Clacton.
That's exactly what you're talking about. So it's a mad system where, like, I even remember whenever I was councillor, there was more sort of like probity around what you were doing then, as opposed to now, where you can just apparently seemingly accept $5 million to keep yourself comfortable. Was it for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Oh no, but then it turned out to be it was actually for work rendered for Brexit.
This is Nigel Farage, for those who don't know, who got a £5 million from a crypto billionaire, and bizarrely he wants to relax rules on cryptos. Crypto billionaire. Coincidence? I don't think so. Anyway, 2 free tickets to the Height of Nonsense. You could accept those, could you?
I could indeed, surely.
Right. Oh, are you free on the 29th of August?
Absolutely. Well, let's do it.
No way out of it now, Tim.
So you're an MP. You've been an MP for 2 years, all right? Yes. Are you loving it? Are you enjoying it? Is it weird? Is it?
Do you know, it's a strange sort of place to be. So I got elected first in 2019 to council, Lisburn Council, and I was only there for maybe a handful of months before COVID.
Right.
And we were away from the chamber. So 2022, I got elected to the Assembly, and because no one could be bothered coming back, and there was another veto, I was literally in that chamber for about 12 weeks, I think, before I then got elected to Westminster. So I've been in Westminster the longest.
Longer than Stone.
Out of anywhere that I've actually, do you know what I mean? So it's lovely to have an experience of being in and making your voice heard, but I've got to be honest, like, see, whenever you're over there and the Assembly's sitting, people are like, what is it you are doing? What is it? Sorry, what? It's like, oh, the budget. Okay, we'll come back in a year. We'll see you in a year. So people sort of way, I think, a lot of the time are like, what is it that you see again over there? Why are there 18 MPs? So I think this was the first time in July 24, whenever we had the general election, that there was actually a sitting Assembly.
Yeah.
Most of the previous GEs in recent times, there hasn't been a sitting assembly, so people were really looking, and sort of, you know, a lot of focus was on Westminster and everything else. Now that the assembly's sitting, for the meantime, I should
Yeah.
add.
Yeah.
For the meantime, touch wood, hedge bets.
Till further notice.
Till further notice. It was a bit of a different ball game where people were a bit less tuned into it, you know.
Did you expect to win?
I will put it like this. I was absolutely certain that we were going to do what we needed to do.
Right.
And whenever you looked at that 2019 result,
Yeah, you did very
people
well.
were, I was literally going around knocking doors and people were like, what are you doing, love? I mean, come
Wasting
on.
your
now.
time.
Wasting your time there, Pet. And I'm like, oh, go on. Oh, sure, he needs a bit of a hook. He needs a bit of a hook. And they were like, oh, well, maybe he does. And we went round, and we didn't think that we were going to get what we got on that occasion. But that, for me, was enough to say there was definitely
A chance.
here. So that was 5 years prior. Then 2022, obviously, we went from the 1 assembly seat to the 2. And then 23, we, made more gains on council. So we knew that there was definitely a desire from people within Lagan Valley to be like, do you know what, we don't want to do this no more. We want to do something different. And I have a real special privilege in that I'm actually born and bred in Lagan Valley.
Right.
My family have roots there for
You're
like
Lisburn,
400
aren't you?
years. Well, just outside. So it's a real privilege. And I think people want to know that you've been there, you've through it all, your family have been there, and you can't beat that. You
Well, to be
literally...
fair, you've made a good splash since you've been over there. Like, you were at the forefront of the taking down Starmer over the old Monelson thing.
Do you know, I honestly never set out to do that. It kind of came about as a moment where I think there'd been a lot of tension building, and people were just so off. And literally, we got in July 24. By the September, it was like, oh, by the way, did we mention we were going to rob old people? And it was like, hold on, no one ever mentioned that. So that happened. And then we obviously had the budget, and most of the budgets are all trailed, extensively these days. But everything in there, the farm tax, the national insurance increase, everything else was like, where the hell? What? And 22 million black hole. It was just so repetitive. There was no joy. There was no
They
kind
took
of...
all the optimism and sucked it in about
Yeah.
2 weeks, going, by the way, we've told
It was like, by the way,
it's going to be miserable.
Yeah, it was like, by the way, did we tell you it was going to be shit? And it was like, hang on a wee second. So whenever this all kicked off, to be fair, I think that came out the September 25. And then there was the whole humble address and whatever. And I was looking at it and people were getting it really, really tight. It was the Iran Strait of Hormuz stuff. People couldn't pay their bills and they were getting it really bad, and they were literally coming in the office in tears, and I was like, this is not getting any better, and we're around wasting time on this shite. And I just let rip. I just let rip, and I just thought, people don't need to be told how shit it is. They're already living it, and what have you done to make it better? Absolutely damn all,
There was a couple of speeches that really hit through. First of all, can I say I'd admire you for one thing. First of all, I'd say this. Watch it again. The one about Mandelson. You wouldn't even get past the vetting for a football, like a kids football
and
team.
that's true. That's true.
No, absolutely, 100%. But what I admire about you was you had notes in your hand, but you didn't do it. You didn't read the notes. You had them in your hand.
Yeah.
We're passionate and all that, but we've seen the assembly, and no disrespect, there are people sitting there going, here is what I'm going to say, and it's written by Bucking AA, and they can't even read it well.
No.
But you know, and
It's
presumably
really
to
soul
stand out
destroying.
in Parliament, you need to have a bit of,
Oh,
a
you've
bit
got to
of
have
power,
a bit of
energy
blarney,
about you.
Yeah, you got to have a bit of the blarney. Like, that's on the Eastwood side. I get that off from
It's
the
all right,
Eastwood.
is it?
Oh, yeah. My mummy's family, oh, Jesus, no, they'd die off before saying booty a goose. No,
It's
no,
all
no.
right.
Oh, God. No, this is all the Eastwood gab, so it is. It's...
So what is your background then? You're a young thing. You probably don't even remember us on TV.
I am 41 in October.
Youngster.
41 in October.
I'm ancient now, honestly.
Aye, right.
Sorcha, please.
Yeah.
Please,
Stop
you're with
it.
the
I'm starting to dye my hair and everything already, so I am to get ready
Sorcha,
for
we
it.
only had you in because we need you to do something about pensions. They would increase the state pension age to 67. It's absolutely ridiculous. Down south, 66.
Wait, I tell you, all joking aside, and I think it's back to that Malison point. There's something inherently wrong where, there's a generation of people that were told, like, you pay in, you play by the rules, you do the right thing, and you have a wee bit in your, your later years or whatever, and the younger generations too, and they're just getting absolutely shafted, and it's not getting any better. And we talked sort of briefly about Farage at the start there, but they had this completely nonsensical proposal. What was it, a proposal? I don't know. It was just a tweet, right? About if you work over 40 hours and you do overtime when you've already worked 40 hours, you'll not pay any tax, or you'll do this and do that and do the other. Like, Liz Truss probably had more economic sense than them, and like that's saying something, but yet they won't get savaged.
Yeah, there is. They do get an easy ride, don't they? There's nothing.
You know, they actually won't get savaged. If I came out and made a proposal like that, I'd be like, silly wee bird, she can't count. You know, but there's not really any sort of robust scrutiny in the same way that others. And listen, robust, do the robust scrutiny, no bothers. But do it to everybody.
Yeah.
You know?
There was a guy who went around interviewing Reform voters and stuff and saying, you know, what, apart from immigration, you know, what are their policies? And none of them really knew what their policies. You know, they're not in favour of the NHS and they're going to tax this and do that and the other, and they haven't a clue. You know,
they just make it up on the hoof.
But it's, you know, but it's more emotional now. But I think that's the problem with politics now. Nobody has an ideology anymore. I mean, he's basically a populist, and the Reform's a populist, and it's anti-immigration. But, you know, is that not the case across the board? We've seen Trump and all of that. If you have an ideology, is there... You know,
do you know, I did another interview a few weeks back, and I said to the person, you know, I don't think people like to talk about left and right, and I don't think left and right is the left and right anymore. It's gone. It's certainly not what people thought they were talking about 20, 30 years ago. Probably people of my generation and above, like yourselves, talk about left and right, and it means certain prescriptive things, but that's all out the window now. And I think what you're saying is ultimately a system that is not delivering for people. And there's a big question now, is Britain ungovernable? Is the system wrong? And whatever else. I think a good thing is actually testing that old two-party system. You know, I think it does deserve to be tested. And what I said to people was, it was actually off the back of Andy Burnham coming to our conference back in March, and he sort of made a speech, and some people gave him a bit of a hard time about that speech. I actually thought there was something in there. Maybe others didn't pick up on it because I'm more attuned to the sort of Westminster blether, but he was saying basically, whether it's the northwest, the northeast of England, whether it's Northern Ireland, all power is centralised in London. And like, that's true. You know, they've literally just cut the tripe out of the local growth fund by about 70%, and that helps some of the most disadvantaged in our society. And they've just cut it. Like, see you later, don't be coming back here. So there is a real point there. And if you look at how government has been done in the past, it's been very much, this is London, we'll give you that money and we're going to keep the rest for ourselves. Now, there's equally a counter-argument to that to say most of the growth is in the southeast of England, and what do you want us to do about it, whatever.
It's the same with a lot of countries,
But there is a real test now in terms of that two-party system being challenged. I think that's a good thing. I think that is a positive thing. But ultimately, you know, if there is a real sea change, and I personally think there'll be a hung parliament, the next parliament, I don't think there'll be a traditional, you know, landslide, as it were. You've had a landslide with Labour, and they've been able to do absolutely damn all with that. And part of that is down to Starmer's ineffectiveness as a leader and a person, and not having any vision. And if he had a vision that was absolutely apparent to me, I would still respect him for at least having a bit of gumption. But he hasn't displayed any of that. So I think there's a real case now to say, how is this working, and what about us in Northern Ireland? Where are we going to be left here? You could have someone like Farage that could come in as part of a hung parliament. I don't even think they'd be asking about a border poll. They would literally just be going, where do I sign this chit to get rid of these? You know, and that would be it. You know, there's no real respect for us over there.
But it looks like you're going to have a nationalist. Well, you've got a nationalist government in Scotland.
Sure, yeah.
You've got one in Wales. You're going to have an English nationalist government
Absolutely.
in England.
Absolutely.
Next time round.
Absolutely.
And then you've got like a nationalist, effectively a nationalist government here. With the, you know, Sinn Féin being the lead party.
Absolutely. And
so it doesn't bode well for a United Kingdom, does it?
I don't think at this stage in the game you would be confident in saying that it will remain that way forever and a day. I think that would be the wrong approach to take. But likewise, you know, for people that do want to maintain that and think that that's something worth doing, you know, where is the introspection? Where is the sort of, well, how do we do this differently? I'm not seeing any of that conversation. I think Burnham in his speech at conference started to potentially reference some of that. But you're talking, huge constitutional, detailed conversation. People are literally scrolling through TikTok. They're not going to have time to engage in those conversations, but they will email you and go, my granny can't get, whatever, or I can't get a GP's appointment. And the challenge for people like me and the challenge for everyone in politics now is to try and get alongside people and communicate better to them. I think we could all do with communicating better, but I also think that there's a very real risk that actually democracy itself is now under threat. And I don't think people in the UK have cottoned on to that. Like, I did a backbench debate in the main chamber last April, and it was on the impact of social media on democracy. And it wasn't like, some people said some nasty things to me online.
No.
That wasn't the vibe at all. It was, look, actually, if you have huge amounts of influence and resource and time and money going into specific online campaigns where there is no verification of facts, you'd be a fool to expect that isn't going to change some minds. And we've seen that come through. And the problem for me is that you're talking about money in politics here, ultimately. I don't have a lot of thousands of pounds down the back of the couch. Most people don't. But you are now seeing people, who do have that big money. And it's not just Farage. There's others right across the spectrum. And there is a real threat. And I think in the south of Ireland, one of the last elections that they had, they were very, very aware of the risk of foreign money, but also misinformation and disinformation going unchallenged. And I think that there is a further challenge to people, and I don't like labels, like I'm not an item of clothing, so like why would I put labels on myself? But there is a challenge to people who want to say something different to the public and to voters that isn't just a lot of hate and bile, but it hasn't been managed well.
Well, how do you stop the bile in the first place? I mean, how does that get controlled? How do you stop?
Well, that's the challenge to people like me, I think, and people who are like-minded, to say, how do we organise ourselves effectively against this? And I think we're going to see probably one of the first seminal fights in Makerfield on that, where there's clearly going to be a battle of ideas and a battle of how do we try and get positivity from a broad range of sources, of people who would vote Reform, of people who would vote Green, but I'm asking for their vote. How do I bring those people together? What's the message for them? And people have really struggled with, well, what is the message? What actually are we saying to them here? Because everything's shit, and like no one's changed anything so far in terms of the big economic structural problems that we have. Yeah. So there's a problem in terms of A, the policy offering, but B, after my PMQ the other month, they were doing a bit of a wash up on Times Radio, and they were like, oh, why, there was plenty of passion there for that wee one, but what all was the point again? And I'm like, see, whenever you've got people that are part of this elite sitting in studios, and I'm going, how can you not see that I am literally from the same place as these people I'm representing? They can't pay their bills. They are literally struggling. They're drowning in life. And you're going, but what was the point? That's the friggin' point. That's the whole damn point. And there's a disconnect between not just elected reps, but elites in the media, elites right across the whole piece that are so disconnected from people. Like, they do not know what a lot of these people are living, thinking, and whenever they do maybe get a whiff of it, they're like, oh, what a terrible thing to say. Oh, couldn't possibly say that. And you're like, do you know what? Yeah, it was a terrible thing I just said, but you need to stop for a wee second and actually ask yourself, why are they saying that? And do you have something better to offer them, instead of just telling them that they're stupid or ignorant or hateful or whatever? And that's the bit that we haven't done. Now, I've tried to do that in a small way in my own patch, in terms of, we talked about the July 24 GE. I do have a broad range of support, and at times it is challenging. Yeah. But if you've got a central plank that you're true to and that you genuinely believe in, people will see that. And that, for me, is tackling societal inequality, tackling, decline in social mobility. I hate that phrase, but with nothing else to replace it just yet. And allowing people to get on in life and have a good life. And a lot of people have just thought, oh, well, they're talking nonsense. They're saying hateful things. I'm not interested in them. Yeah. And then they gurn whenever they go elsewhere. You can't have it both ways. You've got to try and work with people and get alongside and offer them a better future and a more hopeful future. And I can just see people right across the piece completely losing touch with reality. And, that's dangerous to me, because I do think there is a better thing to say, but they're not engaging.
Sorcha, I want you to take this the right way. You can talk.
I love talking.
I wanted to take that the right way.
Do you know my hubby said to me whenever I was in fifth year, he was like, you should have a show called Sorcha All Talk. So that's the goal. That's the goal.
But I mean, you were obviously interested in politics at the time. Why did you choose the Alliance Party? Why not the SLP? You're a good Catholic. Why not choose the SLP or Sinn Féin? You could become an MP. You wouldn't even have to turn up. And you wouldn't have to sit in Parliament and make speeches. You just take the money.
Why did I join the Alliance Party? I never set out to be involved in politics.
Were
ever.
you family political in any sense? No,
not on either side. I used to read Zara McCombs. Nobody was political. In fact, they would have died off. They'd been like, "Oh my God, no."
Right.
It was just like, what's the whole thing that you tell people back in the day, 30 years ago? Don't talk politics or religion. You know, that was how everyone was reared. So I kind of committed a cardinal sin because I got involved in politics.
It's a brave thing to do as well. I mean, particularly with social media and all that sort of stuff. There's people going, why would you have the hassle? And
I remember whenever I went to one of my first Alliance meetings and I was like, oh, Jesus, no. Oh, no. These people are too nice and too posh. No.
Before we go on there, I have a brother in the Alliance Party. I don't know exactly what you were talking about.
You flirted with the Alliance Party.
I did. I canvassed for my brother. Yes, in the interests of
it's all coming out now.
Yeah, I mean, long before you were born, young lady. I was 1981. I canvassed for my brother, and as he stood for an Alliance Party during the hunger strikes, and I knocked on doors and put leaflets through doors for him. Yeah. But the Alliance Party in those days had an image of being completely
we all thought the Alliance Party was
awfully nice.
The posh people were
awfully nice.
All came from North Down.
Why can't we all get on? Wouldn't that be marvellous?
100%.
And we've had Naomi, of course. You are, she's not like that at all, but that still had that hangover image. But you go to your first meeting, did you feel that, or with that?
I suppose for me, in two ways, yes, there was definitely that vibe. 100%, there was without doubt people who fitted that mould, and then there was other people, and I was going, oh. They seem normal as well. They seem like they seem like they know what an estate is as well. That's all right. But I was really surprised, and I think my first party council. So I joined.
Sorry to go. What made you first go? I'm gonna go to a meeting of politics. I'm gonna get into this. Was it
2010? The GE. I was back interested in politics then. I'd always loved politics through school.
In East Belfast.
Yeah, did politics in school, did a Friday level, started law and politics, dropped out.
Oh, dropped out of law.
Yeah. I still have my reputation, see, fellas. You don't.
No, we
We'll take that.
So, was back interested in it again, and I just always liked it from, an interest perspective. I'd never thought that I was going to get involved myself. But 2010... Naomi won, and Chris Little had sort of been like messaging me at the time going, oh, you should get involved and everything else, and I was like, oh, I don't know, it's not really my bag and whatever. I was working full time in Tesco's, and I was like, not really my thing. And 2011 then, it's actually quite profound in a way, but Ronan Kerr was murdered, and that was on the Saturday, and the Monday I rang my local office and I was like, right, what can I do? Because I just don't want to be a part of this. And what am I doing, actually, to challenge this? Sitting on my arse. I'm going to try and get involved. So I did. And that was the Monday. It just happened to be right in the middle of an assembly and council election. And I've just been out on the doors since. And the reason it was Alliance for me was because that's kind of how I was brought up. Yeah. It's a very mixed background of a family, right. With all sorts of views and all sorts of occupations and backgrounds and experiences. And it was never going to be unionist or nationalist for me. Not because I think I'm any better. I think there's anything wrong with that at all, of people with those views in my family, as well as Alliance views. But for me, that was the only option that was ever going to be on the table. And that was why I chose Alliance.
And it's worked out quite well.
Well, you know what we say to people? I joined, sort of started getting interested 2010, was, around in the periphery. 2011 signed in the dotted line, and let me tell you, see, in 2011 no one was joining the Alliance Party to get elected, on the off chance, like it wasn't a career choice.
Same as my brother this time,
do you know?
It wasn't a career choice.
And that 2011 was a joint assembly and council election on the same day, and actually that's going to happen next year.
Right.
I still have not forgiven the NIO for that, but anyway.
Right.
And that was a real experience to me. And whenever I look at some of the election counts that I've been at since, it's day and night. And we always joke that, Jesus, 2011, it certainly wasn't a career choice. Like, you were joining because you just wanted to get involved in the background and pay your sub and do wee bits and pieces and whatever.
The Alliance surge and all of that, yeah.
Jesus, I mean, I honestly thought that we were going to increase over time, certainly.
Yeah.
But back in 2011, it was much more like this is a true passion for me. It wasn't like, it's career.
Naomi's one of the longest serving leaders in the United Kingdom, I think. We had this discussion, didn't we? I think maybe somebody else was slightly longer. But do you see yourself as a future leader?
No.
Oh, come on. Give us a scoop. Come on.
No. Everyone always asks me this.
Is that all right?
I'm absolutely fascinated by it. I'm the MP for Lagan Valley. Lagan Valley is my first love, and it's my whole world. It's my whole life.
Right.
And it's a huge job. It is a big job, and that's my focus. That's my whole life. That's what I want to do.
Okay, well, because you're Alliance Party, there's a border poll in 10 years' time. Right down there, are you voting yes or no? Well, I'll not tell anybody. Just are you for? Do
it's a really interesting question, and I actually did a big interview with Mark Crothers last summer. And obviously he asked me all the usual, are you going to be leader and border poll?
You mean my questions are unoriginal?
And I had said to him that this didn't make it into the interview, but I said to him, see, whenever we've got everything sorted out in Northern Ireland, that we actually don't have to worry about GPs appointments, care packages, the road, special educational needs, come back and ask me what my views is on that then, right? Because that is the day-to-day priority for me. But I said, but the second thing, we can and should be doing an awful lot more work with the South in terms of, looking at all-island health, looking at all-island infrastructure. And I do an awful lot of work in that space.
Yeah.
And no one ever asks me about it. No one ever says to me, and I'm actually surprised at some of the parties that do claim to be getting up in the morning, living, breathing, sleeping, eating United Ireland. And they never seem to go in that space or talk about it. And funny enough, that never made it in the interview in the final cut. But, we're sort of talking about Croke Park at the start. And I was in the Dáil last week at the Joint Good Friday Agreement Committee, which Northern Ireland MPs are entitled to sit on. And I think it's really important to be there. I think that's really, really important to do, to take your seat in London and Dublin and to be part of those conversations and to say, look, we don't need to have a constitutional conversation to do more on cancer care on the island of Ireland. We don't have to do it. I mean, you can do it, and obviously people are doing it, but we don't have to do it in order to actually do that.
Is there not a good argument to say you're one voice, you're one Alliance MP among 650 in the UK?
Absolutely,
If you were down south, you'd be one voice out of 174. With the louder voice, the bigger voice, it's more influence.
I think that it's not about being an alliance voice in 650 MPs. They don't listen to anybody from Northern Ireland. It's not just a special achievement for me. They don't listen to anybody. Yeah. And do you know what I find sometimes bizarre? They're much more concerned about Scotland and Wales.
Yeah.
Is that because they have oil? I don't know. In Scotland anyway. But, we are just not even the last on the list. Yeah. And whenever we had the unfortunate events in Lagan and Murray recently, both literally at the outskirts of my constituency, the fact that I had to ask for an urgent statement rather than them making one themselves in their own right.
They don't care.
Just said it all to me. And someone made a bit of a gallows humour comment to me after it and said, that's devolved. Security alerts and bombs are devolved. Yeah. And it was a bit of a joke with a jibe, I certainly got what they were saying. And I'll be honest with you, you can't afford to be complacent about Northern Ireland, and you can't afford to be complacent about how we do things here. And I think one thing that pisses me off no end is the fact that we've said for a long time in Alliance about we need to change how Stormont works and whatever. And a lot of people are now coming on the same page, and that's fair enough. But see, for me, the British and Irish governments, to ignore it and to keep expecting that we're all going to get together in a room and come out kumbaya and go, yep, let's all do this. Yeah. What are they smoking? Yeah. Because that's never going to happen. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, if you do end up with Farage or whoever across the water, well, I'll tell you what, you will know all about it then.
Have you met him?
I have, surely, yes.
And
I get on grand with them. I get on with everybody. There's nobody I wouldn't get on with. We were at the garden party together last year, actually, which was a gig. But no, he's a charming man, as you would imagine, in real life. And I think anybody that says that Farage isn't an excellent political communicator is a liar. Clearly, he is a very strong communicator. And what's interesting is that whenever you look at some of the early campaign videos coming out of Makerfield, it's very, very clear that they take things that work well. So, for example, the Gorton and Denton by-election, the Hannah Spencer video, the whole kind of, story of her background, plumber, etc., blah, blah, blah. And then they come up with a video of, oh, we've got a plumber, they're from the area, blah, blah. Oh, I wonder where you took that from. But, they're not... They're big enough to look at things that work well elsewhere and just unashamedly take them. And I think that's a drive that we have within people who are within that sphere, that people, and I hate the word liberal, progressive, whatever, I'm not into labels, I'm really not, because I don't want to put people off that actually would end up supporting. But I just don't like that word, or I don't like what that means to me. But no, I understand what you're saying, and actually I would support that. But people who want to challenge and offer a different future, they're not very good sometimes about just, brass necking it and being like, actually, that worked well for them, so we'll put our own positive spin on it and take that campaign and take that idea. They're not doing that,
See, I found, like, when I was practicing law, the thing that would have annoyed me or pissed me off most was other lawyers. I like clients. Clients were great.
Yeah.
But do you feel that way with politicians? I mean, do other politicians just annoy you?
Do you know, I think that's something that comes over time. Whenever I was at that first count in 2011, I was literally walking about like it was a derby match. I was like, oh my God, I hate these things, and what are they doing, and how dare they come in here? They're trying to get our Coke out of the vending machine, and because you're all sitting about in some leisure centre, like, and I think over time that leaves you, and then whenever you become elected yourself to various different forums, and you see people, and you meet them face to face, and you see the whites of their eyes, and you get to know them as a person. That, for me anyway, personally, is a game changer, because you get to see that they're in this for the same reasons as I am.
Did you ever meet Mondelson?
No, I didn't, thank God.
Never had the pleasure?
Never had the pleasure.
See, we were going to bring you
Never
on.
had the pleasure.
We were going to bring you on to ask you, could you get us Jim Alistair, because he won't come on this show. But now I'm going to change
Jim's
that.
a gent.
Well, we'll get to that. But could you get us Nigel Farage? Because he...
How long do you message him here?
No, but Jim, do you have to share a plane? You go back and forth with Robin and Jim?
Very often we're all on the same planes.
And Jim is a gentleman.
He's helped me with my suitcase.
Very
So,
good.
guy.
He's a lovely guy. I get on with him. I think over time, Jim and I kind of did the tour of TV studios 2022 to 2024 about Brexit and everything else. And we actually did pretty well out of that, didn't we?
Right,
Made it over there. But I think over time you come to respect somebody. And there's not a single person that I wouldn't respect in politics.
But you wouldn't think you regard Farage as dangerous, though, in terms of what he could achieve or the danger he brings with his party.
I mean, like, is he a Fuhrer and waiting? Like, do you think?
I think the minute you start to get into that conversation, you're already kind of not understanding why he's doing so well.
Okay.
So I think if you look at, let's take the US, right, for a second. So Trump won. Right? Trump one happened, everyone was like, Jesus Christ, where did that come from? Thought that was a smart country or whatever.
Very funny now, don't do that again.
Yeah, exactly. right. Great joke, guys. But no, it was actually a thing. And I think from you guys are obviously, civilians and all of this, you're entitled to your own whatever. But from my side of the fence, where it is actually part of my job to challenge them and to be like, how can we effectively address this or offer an alternative? I feel that too often a lot of people sitting on my side of the table are looking at them and being like, yeah, idiots. Why the hell would you vote for that, or why would you support that? If you look at somewhere like the US where Trump happened and then Trump 2 happened, now, do I think Biden was the only person that could have beat him at the end of that? I do, yeah. But did they botch it badly in terms of the Democratic Party with the nomination? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They didn't give it enough thought. And then what made it worse was they thought, oh, we'll go back into the Clinton family.
Yeah.
Sorry, but, if that maybe had have been another strain of politics, maybe somewhere else in the spectrum, I'm sure people like me would have been going, are they just keeping that in the family, like Nepo baby style? Like, what's going on there? So for me, if you're going to call it out for one, you've got to call it out for, everybody. And that's just not being a hypocrite, for starters. But if you look at how things have gone wrong in the UK, front bench of both Labour and Tories, predominantly Oxbridge. I know this Labour government says that they don't have as many Oxbridge graduates and whatever, but there's people in the background who are very well versed. They're both elites, right? And if they didn't come from that sort of background, the minute they get through the door, it's all forgotten about and whatever. And that's the danger. That is more of a danger. People forgetting where they came from and people forgetting why they got into a job. Too out of touch. And Farage comes along and says, listen, folks, you can't pay your bills. Everything's gone to shit. Look at your high street. There's vape shops everywhere, this, that and the other. I'm going to do something about that. Now, how he's going about doing something about it is pretty unsavoury, right? Saying some pretty crass and absolutely ludicrous things that I personally would never subscribe to or agree with. But he's getting through to people. And I'm going, well, actually, I don't like that proliferation of the vape shops either. I would much rather there was a thriving wee local independent business in there. And why are they not in there? So that takes you down a different path. And it's what we spoke about earlier about what works well for people and just taking it and going, yeah, we can do that better. So there's vape shops opening up everywhere at the minute. That's just one thing. Take, for example, people hate it. But it's collapsed a town centre. Why is that so important to people? Because they've been really good at taking nostalgia and packaging it almost as a political concept. And we know that things weren't great back in the day. We know that people struggled in terms of, we kind of, joked about employment law and, fair employment rights and all the rest at the start. But, that was a huge success that people didn't have back in the day. They couldn't rely on that. People have much better rights and protections now, which is really important. But people now are looking and going, actually, I haven't improved my life. Actually, I don't have steady work. The precariat was a concept from about 10, 15 years ago, and austerity has made it even worse. And no one is speaking to those people and getting through to them. And I don't want to say the right, but the right have done a very good job of getting through to those people. And we've got to ask ourselves a question, why? And how can we do that better?
I completely understand why Trump won. I actually do. I understand why he appeals to, he's a multi-billionaire, complete narcissist, but I understood he appealed to that. Why? How did he manage to get extremely poor Americans to vote for him?
Absolutely.
People living in their cars.
People living in cars.
Absolutely. And this is the same contract, though, with Farage, where, public school educated, banked at one of the most exclusive banks in the world. On the trading floors, everything else. How someone from an ordinary estate that any of us grew up in thinks that man actually gets it. And will get into the office and try and make their life better. Now, I could well be proved wrong.
But that's because he likes a pint and a fag. And that sounds crass and all.
No, it doesn't sound crass.
But people go, yeah, I could have a pint with him. I'd rather have a pint with him than Keir Starmer.
One eye of vegan goat milk and whatever, 100%.
Would you like to go out for a night with Jeremy Corbyn? Whatever you agree with,
well, actually, Jeremy might be good crack.
Which vegetarian restaurant?
I think Damon would like to go to Jeremy Corbyn.
Just in a different sort of spectrum, but there's a point there. There's a point there. I think there's an awful lot of snobbery.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of political snobbery, and there's an awful lot of, but, have you not read your Foucault, and have you not read your Mills, and have you not,
Gramsci.
Get out of it, would you?
Not read your Jim Allister.
Yeah, get on Twitter, get on whatever, get on Facebook, and, it's all going to be, most of it is all, as I said, town centres, potholes, pensions, you joked about at the start. People's life isn't getting better, and instead they're farting around like the Great British Summer Savings. What the hell was that? I have been campaigning for over a year now on a VAT cut for hospitality, and you talk about the collapse of town centres, hospitality is going to die, and it terrifies the life out of me. You had Michael Dean on, I think, a lot of months back, and Michael has been really supportive, Colin and the guys at Hospitality Ulster, and the reason that Great British Summer Savings was so hurtful almost in a way was because they have put a small bit of money from the Exchequer into that, but it's farting around and it's not actually tackling the main issue. And the main issue is that they have decided as a government through death by 1,000 cuts to absolutely annihilate that sector. Yeah. Now that supports an awful lot of employment. It supports an awful lot of first jobs. You hear from employers all the time, we get people in through the door and they can't maintain eye contact, they can't look at you, they can't speak to you, they can't, you know. Yeah. Well, you've just decided through your economic policies to take all those jobs away.
There's about 2 pubs a day closing in the UK, I think.
You know, and it's back to that thing though of, you know, the pub, yes, is a watering hole, but in certain communities, it's more than that. It's about almost a community cohesion and intergenerational learning and places for people. And
that's why I go.
Yeah, see? got a line for you there.
Yeah, that's why you
intergenerational learning. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I see you were born in 1985.
That's right.
Unfortunately, we remember 1985 very well because that was the year of the Anglo-Irish Agreement.
That's right.
Which was kind of the start of where we ended up with the Good Friday Agreement and all of that, you know. But so it was a bit of a bit of an eventful year to be born in.
It was. I mean, if you look at that year,
I don't think she remembers it, Damon.
if you look at that year, and probably, you know, someone like me in the position that I'm in now, there probably could be a line of political thought that could be traced back to that. I think over time people have become disillusioned in Northern Ireland from both unionist and nationalist backgrounds, predominantly unionist, I would probably say, and they have wanted something different. And I think certainly Brexit was a game changer. There's no doubt about it. If you think that Brexit didn't change politics in Northern Ireland, you're fooling yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that was probably the time in which I decided to become much more involved in politics. I've been working in business up to that stage, and my path was starting to cross with people in politics because of Brexit and because of some of the issues that we had as a business community. And eventually then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And I started working for Stephen Farry. And I think that was a huge part of my political realisation, where it was just such a feckless act. You know, whether you were for Brexit or against Brexit, you would be naive in the extreme to think that Northern Ireland had factored into any of the conversations.
No.
You know, and actually, you know, to hear some of the comments that Robin made on the pod a few weeks back, you know, there's somebody who is an avowed unionist, you know, who is big enough to say, actually, that wasn't a good idea. You know, that was the reason why someone like me, who isn't unionist or nationalist, didn't want it in the first place. But if you're coming from a unionist perspective, it was probably the worst thing that could ever have happened.
But I don't know why a lot of them didn't see it. Just didn't see it coming.
It's the $1 million question that will probably
look, it was obvious to me. Right, looking at it, well, where's the border?
Well, tell you, I was working in Lagan at the time, and I remember we come in very, very clearly the Friday, the next day, the 24th of June, I think it was, and we're sort of bantering and chatting and whatever about it as you do, and a load of people that were definitely not unionists were going to me, oh no, we all voted out. Yeah. I'm like, what'd you do that for? They're like, oh, because sure, it'll speed up United Ireland.
Yep.
You know, and I was like, holy hell, they've been through that and they've come to a different place than me, but they've thought this through. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying a lot of people did that, clearly they didn't, but it was a conversation amongst people. And I think even if you look at the Sinn Féin position, historically speaking, they were not down about the EU in the same sense that they are now, or certainly were not throughout that campaigning process and that kind of 5-year period from 2016 right up to 21-22 in the Windsor framework and all. And it definitely challenged positions, it changed positions, but I think it has pulled the fabric of Northern Ireland to really fraying point, I think. And it's through no kind of credit that anybody in Northern Ireland can claim. Yeah. It was all through the UK government, you know.
What do you do to relax? By the way, we're coming near the end here, I'm afraid, because you've talked for, well, apart from coming to see Tim McGarry's Height of Nonsense in the Lyric Theatre on the 29th of August, do you go to gigs? Do you get out? Do you have fun? Do you, no? No?
I'm a 24/7 working machine. That's where I'm sitting here now. This
is your day off and you're in here with us.
No, I I don't get a lot of time, to be honest.
Right.
I don't. I like reading.
Right.
I'm a real nerd. I like reading weird
Foucault.
things. I'm more of a give me a map of all the weird things in Northern Ireland. So
Alright.
DFC basically started this new map where they've different layers of like abandoned coal mines
wow.
and all these different weird things and historical artifacts and raths and forts and all these wee weird
wow.
things.
Alright.
So I just love reading those maps and I
Like
remember
a map? Wow.
yeah, and at the far end of the constituency, just past the turnoff for Dramara before Banbridge, like literally just before Banbridge, there's a big old like quarry pit, like mountain at the side of it, and out past it is the comment. And I always like looked at that and thought, what's the deal there? What was going on there historically? And actually, they tried to mine iron ore there throughout the war, and it's actually quite embarrassing and a bit funny. But I remember some of the old Northern Ireland MPs throughout the Second World War were like, "Why don't you take our iron ore from Northern Ireland into the war effort?" And they're like, "Guys, it's crap quality." So there's sort of something there. But I like just finding out things like that and history, and I love history.
You ever seen the Raven maps? In Bangor, going with the Raven maps were made in 1610,
yeah.
beautiful coloured maps in the Bangor Library.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Bangor
Montgomery
Museum.
Hamilton.
Montgomery Hamilton, the plantation maps. Anyway, sorry, that's so you love looking at iron ore mines, right? Okay. You see,
I'm so weird.
this is the only clip that'll go in the rest of your political stuff. You go. That's the only clip that'll go.
People
go
are
viral.
like, "You look and sound like a millbag, and you're looking up iron ore maps. What's going on there?"
It's in train spot.
Sorcha, thank you very, very much for coming in. Really
Thank you
appreciate
for
we genuinely have tried. We talked to Robin as well. Try to get Jim Allister on. We're trying to be as cross community as possible. We're trying to get a Shinner. Shinners won't speak to us.
Oh,
They won't speak to us. Will you have a word?
I'll have a.
Will you have a wee word? Yeah.
Do you want an MP or an MLA?
I want MP. Give us a name.
Because they're not doing
I'll say
anything.
them.
They're not doing anything. They're busy. Like.
Do you know I'm actually reading a book at the minute by Dean Godson on David Trimble. It's about this thick.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
from about
okay.
20 odd years ago. It's about my fourth time rereading it. And there was actually a huge row in and around the time of 99, 2000 as to them getting
the offices, that's
and
right.
money
That's
and
right.
Yeah,
everything
that's
else.
right.
Yeah.
So,
I remember
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
but it's funny how all those things kind of get forgotten. And I was saying to people, do you know, the one thing, obviously I'd have a different view of the world than the Ulster Unionist Party, but looking at that book and reading now, you can definitely see where a lot of the seeds of the discontent were sowed. And to be fair, I think there is a lot of questions for the UK government they asked about how they treated things over that period of time. And you can't get away from that. It's haunting us now almost, in a way.
Yeah.
And I think there is a real feeling that, do I trust the UK government? No, I don't. No, I don't.
That's a very unionist thing to say.
And I think
Nationalist.
probably
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
It's a cross community endeavour.
Yeah, it
Not
is
just in the
actually
UK
true.
government.
That's true, actually, yeah.
But I think anybody that's switched on will reach that conclusion. And I think for me, if with all the troubles that are going through at the minute in terms of leadership and whatever, one of the things they could do very, very quickly was to reverse that local government, local growth fund. You know, they haven't done it. They won't do it. And the fact that I can sit here and say that so confidently is just completely wrong. You know,
Well, we don't count. You say we're small. We're too small.
Too small.
it angers me. It angers me. It does anger me, you know, because we are a proud people, no matter if you're nationalist, unionist, whatever, we are a proud people with a proud history. And most people out there do get on, they work together, live together, you know, for the most part. And we have some fantastic people here. Our history, our entrepreneurs, our innovations, whatever. And they just treat us like we're shit in a shoe. And I think anybody that cares about the people here and just a bit of dignity and respect will stand up for us all, you know, and say that.
I'm from North Belfast originally. We had an MP for many, many years called Johnny McQuaid, who's apparently his only contribution to Hansard in the entire time he was there was, "I'm a man from the Shankill Road."
Fair play to him.
That's it.
Fair play to him.
You have overcome that and done far better than that in 2 years. Sorcha, thank you very much for being on the Give My Head podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, if you like and subscribe and follow us online and ask questions or whatever you want. In the meantime, Sorcha Eastwood, MP, best of luck to you. Thank you very much for being on the Give My Head podcast. Thank you. Sorcha.
Thank you.